Yo, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. And today's video is kind of special. Well, it's not that special. It is the weekly running and training vlog where the main purpose, as always, is for you to let me know about your week of running. I want to hear about your successes and I definitely want to hear about those setbacks. On the day that this video is released, I am running the 126th Boston Marathon. At least that's the plan. But aside from you telling me about your week of running, I just wanted to talk to you guys about the taper, specifically about the marathon taper, because I've kind of been going through it for the last couple of weeks. So in this video, I'll be telling you 5 things not to do in your marathon taper. And I'll just let you know right off the bat that I have actually done a couple of these things. But as always, do as I say, not as I do, and we'll get right into it. Okay, number 1, the first thing to avoid during your marathon taper is running too much. And guys, I know some of you are rolling your eyes, Matt, of course, you don't want to run too much. That's the idea of the taper. You want to run less. But this is the interesting thing about the marathon taper. It is both an art and a science. And there have been numerous studies throughout the years that actually support the efficacy of the marathon taper. And these studies show that a proper taper can get you between 3 and 5% faster on marathon day. So with those kind of numbers on the line, it's pretty important that we take the taper seriously. But even though there is scientific support for the marathon taper, it's still an art. And if you ask 10 different athletes or 10 different coaches how to approach the taper, you are going to get 10 different answers. And I've already gone off on a tangent in the first 30 seconds of this video, but we're going back to the first thing to avoid, and that's running too much. And here's why you may be tempted to run too much, because you know what? It goes through all our minds. When we stop running, the first thing we think about is losing fitness. And even though you've watched all these videos on YouTube, even though you've read all the articles telling you that by holding back, by not working out, you're actually going to still be getting those fitness gains, we still doubt ourselves when it comes to the taper. It drives us crazy. Probably where the name the Taper Crazies came from. So I need you to respect the taper by not running too much. Listen, you have put in the work. I don't know how long you've been training for a marathon. Perhaps you've even been training for this race for 16 weeks. Well, my friends, it is not worth throwing it away in the last 2 weeks because you run too much. Take it easy and relax. Which brings me nicely to tip number 2 of things to avoid. I guess if we're avoiding it, it's not really a tip. But anyway, the second thing to avoid in the marathon taper is running too little. Ooh. You see what I did there? From one extreme to the other. So it's true, you don't want to run too much, you also don't want to run too little. And I'm going to use the same reasoning as I just did for running too much. So you have been training for 12, 14, 16 weeks for this marathon. Your body has become accustomed to running. You have become accustomed to running a certain number of days of the week. And you might think to yourself, well, you know what, Matt, my legs are pretty tired from going through all this training. I'm just going to stop running. I'm not going to run for the 2 weeks before my marathon and then everything's going to be good. My legs are going to be super fresh because I haven't run. My friends, it doesn't work that way. And let me give you an example. So you've been going through your marathon training and it's likely you've been doing 2 speed type sessions a week. You might have been doing intervals on one day. You might have been doing a tempo run on another day. Well, those days in between your hard workouts, you're not just sitting on the sofa doing nothing. You're going out, you're running an easy run. I'm sure one of those days has been a long run. Somehow, magically, you are recovering enough to hit those workouts that you have to in order to train for this marathon. So what I'm saying is to trust your body, because you have been hitting these workouts for the last couple of weeks. You've been making these workouts longer as you progress towards the marathon. This is no different. You don't have to stop running in order to perform your best. In fact, if you stop running, you will not perform your best. And perhaps you saw my video last week about the research behind elite runners and how they perform. One of the big differences between elite runners and the general population, you and me, is that they do not back off their mileage as much as the general population does. When they come into a taper, they don't bring it down as much as we generally do. They keep the intensity, of course, but they also keep the volume just a little higher than you and I might think we should. So guys, I need you to find that Goldilocks zone. Don't run too much, don't run too little. And I am not going to give you a taper plan in this video. There are so many out there that you can really find one that works for you. I will be talking about what I did at the end of this video when I go over my last week of training coming up to the Boston Marathon. One more thing, one more reason of why you don't want to run too little is because you know how when you take a couple days off, you kind of expect to feel good, but you don't? It's really counterintuitive. When we're working out hard and then we take a couple days off, you would think that those couple days off are going to make you feel good. You think your legs are going to be fresh, you are going to be raring to go. You and I both know that that doesn't happen. After a couple days off, we can feel very sluggish. And that is totally normal. You cannot expect to feel fresh after just a couple of days. And that doesn't mean you're not going to perform your best. But I don't want you guys going into the taper thinking that you're going to be so fresh after these couple of weeks of down mileage that you're going to be skipping through the flowers. Your legs still might be feeling a little heavy. You might be feeling a little sluggish. But here's the thing, and ultimately this is what it all comes down to. You've got to trust the process. Moving on to number 3, the third thing to avoid in your marathon taper is by dropping all intensity. My friends, you are training for a race. Now I know we're talking about the marathon, but you are also going to be tapering for a half marathon. You're going to be tapering for other distances. You need to maintain that intensity at least 2 weeks out from the race so your body remembers what it's doing. It needs to remember how to run at race pace. Now 2 weeks out, you are going to be dropping your mileage, you're going to be lowering your volume, but you still need to include some speed work at least 2 weeks before your event. So yeah, the third mistake that people make is cutting out all speed work because it's hard. Yeah, it's hard for a reason. It's making you better. And I also want you to remember that it can take 10 to 12 days to actually see the effects of a hard workout. So try and make that last tempo run about 10-11 days before your race start. My friend, it's going to leave you primed. You are going to be ready to run. The fourth thing that I want you to avoid in the marathon taper, so leading up to the race, is becoming too race obsessed. And I know this is easier said than done, because just earlier today, before I press record on this video that you're watching right now, I went down a Strava rabbit hole, and I was opening up all the windows in my browser, every Boston Marathon that I've run since I got on Strava. And I started analyzing the runs that I was doing leading up to each Boston Marathon. And of course, I start noticing things. I start noticing things that I did different in the past that actually led to pretty good results. And it's some things that I'm not doing on this training block. Of course, then I start doubting myself. I start questioning what I've been doing. And that, in a nutshell, is what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to become so race obsessed that you start panicking about the event that you've been working towards. At this point in the taper, I hate to say it because it's such a cliche, but the hay is in the barn. You have done all the work, now it's time to reap the reward. And the reward is still a couple weeks away if you're just starting your taper, so don't spend that time stressed by stressing about the race. Nothing you can do in the taper is actually going to make you better on race day. Remember that, you've done the work. And the fifth thing that I want you to avoid when you are going into your marathon taper is doubting yourself. And I think this does tie into the one before about obsessing over the race, because to use the same example, when I was looking at my past Boston Marathon finishes, I put that little seed of doubt in my head. And then I start thinking about that I'm training at much slower paces that I want to run at. But there are other considerations, like I've been running in the heat. Hopefully on race day, the race is going to be much more favorable than what we have typically been running in here in Florida. But still, that difference just plants that seed in my head. And I have to say that I've been doubting myself. So again, do as I say, not as I do. Do not doubt yourself. You have put in the work and you are going to perform well on race day. Okay, those are like 5 main things that I want you to avoid. I did have a couple more tips about food and sleep, but those don't deserve to be their own tips. You do need to keep eating. You have to fuel your body even though you're not doing the same amount of activity. And sleep is where all the work happens. This is where our body repairs itself and we get stronger. You need to get sleep. But I'm not going to make those a point because everybody knows that, right? You know what? I will throw in a bonus thing to avoid, not a tip, and that is not to stress about gaining weight. My friends, it is very likely that you are going to gain weight in the taper leading up to the marathon. And that is 100% normal. So don't stress it. You have put in the work. You are going to be fueling and doing less activity than you have been doing over the past couple of months. Your body is storing those glycogen stores. You're eating more carbohydrates, which is holding onto more water, so your weight is naturally going to increase. Now is not the time to worry about that. It is a total normal process. So just accept that, don't stress about the race day, and do not doubt yourself. All right guys, I had a really great final week coming into my taper. So I have found that for me, I like a 2-week taper. And this has come over experimenting over the years. I have run a few marathons before this one, so I have had a little bit of experience and I've just found that 2 weeks works pretty well. So my highest mileage week came right before I started the taper at 71.02 miles. For the first week of the taper, I didn't drop it to the deck. Just like I said, running too little, that's something to avoid. Now, if you saw last week's running and training vlog, you know that I ran 48.47 miles 2 weeks before the marathon. That is a drop of 31% from my higher week the week before. Now it's race week. And this is where a little bit of nuance comes in, because you do have to run. You have to keep your body feeling like it needs to run. And a lot of coaches say that you want to run the same number of days a week that you do in training. For me, I prefer to take an extra day off in the week before the marathon. And I also bring my volume way down. Now, the week before the marathon, for me, it's all easy runs, but I do include strides at the end of those easy runs just to get those legs turning over. Now, the idea of this last week is to go out, put in a little bit of work, but not enough that you get fatigued. Leading up to Boston, my first day, Monday, I ran 6 miles. Very easy, like keeping that heart rate super low. And then towards the end of my run, I did just throw in 5 30-second repeats with 30 seconds recovery in between, and I ended that day feeling pretty good. Now, also on this Monday, I did one very quick weight workout. It was an upper body weight workout, but from Monday moving into race day, I am not going to do any weights. All right, moving on to Tuesday. Now, Tuesday was I guess it was my biggest workout of the week. I ran a total of 6 miles, and I started off a little faster than I usually do, and then I started to realize perhaps I should just try and run at marathon pace for a little bit, but I actually decided to run at marathon power. So I had my eye on my Stride foot pod measurements on my watch, and I kept this run at about 90% of my critical power, which is what Stride suggests I should be running the Boston Marathon. And then towards the end of that run, I did pick it up a little more, and I just did 6 30-second pickups with 30 seconds recovery in between, just to really get those legs spinning. Now, some of you may be thinking that it's a little too heavy of a workout, but let me remind you that it was only 6 miles. I finished this run feeling really fresh. Wednesday, I went out for 4.2 miles, very easy. No pickups, no strides, just easy running. And then Thursday I knocked out 5.1 miles, and then towards the end I did 4 30-second pickups with 30 seconds recovery and 3 1-minute pickups with 1 minute recovery in between. I'm trying to keep a little bit of intensity even on these easy runs. Adding in these pickups actually leaves my legs feeling a lot fresher. And then Friday was a travel day, so no running. Saturday I also decided to take off, so 2 days in a row. Saturday I went to the expo, and I knew I was going to be walking around a lot. And then Sunday, my last run of the week before the Boston Marathon, the last run of the taper, I knocked out 4 miles, and this was a very undulating course that I did my shakeout on, so my heart rate was really getting a little jacked when I was going up the hills, but that's okay. I'm feeling pretty good. I also threw in just 4 30-second strides just to get those legs turning over, bringing my week's total to 25.3 miles, which is about 40 kilometers, and that is about 40% of my average of the past 4 weeks of training before I hit the taper. I think that's pretty good. Some of you might think that's a little low, but it's worked for me because I'm feeling pretty good right now. All right, guys, don't forget to let me know about your week of running. Again, if you have made it this far in the video, my number for the Boston Marathon is 6580. You can download the Boston Marathon app and you can track me if you want, but if not, I'm sure I will post something about it at some point. All right, guys, be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.